My wife, who seems to have grown bored of me, took the bold step of reconnecting with her ex for some action behind my back. That's the unpleasant truth I uncovered after setting up recorders to expose her. Hey there, everyone. I've been silently scrolling through this forum for about 6 months, but I finally hit a point where I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I really need your thoughts on what's going on in my life. Here's the situation. I'm a 35-year-old guy, and my wife, who's 31, and I haven't been intimate for the past 6 months. It's been eating away at me, and I honestly don't know how to handle it. For context, we have 2 young boys. Our eldest is 3, and our little one is just a year and a half. Oh, and we're right in the thick of building a house, which doesn't exactly make things easier. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who likes to sit back and watch everything crumble. If there's an issue, I prefer to tackle it head-on, so I decided to have an honest conversation with my wife to figure out what was going on. I asked her directly, why did she stop talking to me? Why did she pull away from hugs, kisses, and even flinch at the touch of my hand? And why did our intimacy completely vanish? At first, she put up a wall, acting like there was nothing to discuss. Breaking through that tough exterior wasn't easy, but eventually, she opened up, and what she shared hit me like a ton of bricks. According to her, I just wasn't enough. She felt like she was carrying the entire load herself, making all the decisions, managing the kids, running the household. She essentially told me that I'd probably be better off alone. I'll admit, hearing this was a shock. But instead of getting defensive, I told her I understood where she was coming from and promised to work on myself. I love her too much to let things escalate into a fight. Still, deep down, I couldn't shake this nagging feeling that something wasn't adding up. Her accusations didn't match reality, or at least my reality. I'm not perfect, but I truly believe I meet the criteria of a good husband. I work full-time, about 8 to 9 hours a day, and when I'm done, I dive into my dad duties. I spend time with the boys, feed them, take my eldest to swimming lessons, and put them to bed. I'm even up in the middle of the night when needed. On top of parenting, I pitch in around the house. Sure, I might not be the world's best cleaner. She says I'm inefficient, but I do the dishes, grocery shopping, and some tidying up. Plus, I handle things like the car and matters related to our new house. I'm doing my best to lighten her load because I know having 2 little kids is tough. But here's the thing. I'm not a naturally proactive person. Some people can't sit still. They're constantly thinking about what needs fixing or planning their next big move. That's not me. I'm more of a once the day's done, let's relax type. I like to unwind with a movie or some video games. It's just how I recharge. I've also never been the entrepreneurial type. I'm good at what I do and prefer to focus on that. While I don't dream of millions, I'm happy making a decent living and enjoying family life. For years, this seemed to work for us. We were happily married for 4 years and together for 5 years before that. So, what changed? Our first big talk happened in December. After that, I started pushing myself to be more proactive. I took on extra chores, ran out for additional groceries, and avoided sitting around in the evenings. While she seemed to appreciate the effort, her attitude toward me didn't really shift. So, I had to confront her again. This time, I got straight to the point. Do you want to save our marriage? Her response? I don't know. Ouch. Then I asked if she'd be willing to try marriage counseling. Again, I don't know. It felt like a punch to the gut, but I pressed on, pointing out that our kids deserve clarity, not parents living in limbo. That finally got her to agree. I took it upon myself to find a therapist because, honestly, she showed zero interest. During one of our sessions, she dropped another bombshell. She admitted she married me to impress her parents and siblings, to create this picture-perfect family with beautiful children. She confessed she was enchanted by the idea of it all, but never truly in love. To make things more awkward, she mentioned consulting a priest about our marriage. So far, we've had 2 counseling sessions and are preparing for a third. We've discovered that we have completely different love languages. I need physical affection, while she values actions and tasks. But even with this new understanding, she hasn't made any effort to meet me halfway. No hugs, no physical connection, nothing. After each session, I've tried to check in with her feelings, but all she says is that she's uncomfortable sharing personal details with a stranger. That's where we stand, and I'm honestly at a loss for what to do next. When the therapist learned that my wife and I had been sleeping in separate rooms for 6 months, she was stunned. My wife explained that it was because she sleeps in the bed with our kids, leaving no room for me. The therapist, clearly unimpressed, said it was a terrible example to set for the kids. If there's no room, go to IKEA, buy a single bed, and put it next to the main one, she suggested. Taking her advice, I went ahead and did just that. I bought the bed, set it up, and now I sleep there. But honestly, it doesn't feel any different. My wife stays on one side of the bed, the boys are sandwiched in the middle, and I'm all the way on the other side. It's like I'm sleeping alone in the same room. Lately, my wife has been shifting her story. Now she says she's been feeling depressed from being cooped up with the kids all day. She claims that the harsh things she said before were just her being emotional. I can't imagine saying anything like that to her, no matter how upset I was, but I tried to believe her. Recently, she returned to work, and we hired a nanny to help with the kids. While we started talking more, the dynamic hasn't changed much. Here's the issue. I'm not just her friend. I'm her husband. In intimacy, it's non-existent. She's indifferent about our marriage counseling sessions, and I'm the one keeping them going. I'm also the one bringing up the lack of intimacy. She told me she doesn't need it and only engaged in it because I wanted it. That hit me hard. It made me feel like some kind of manipulator. To be fair, she was never overly enthusiastic about sex. Once a week was our norm, which I could live with. But this year? Twice. Once in January for my birthday, as if intimacy now requires a special occasion, and the second time after a counseling session. And both times it was purely mechanical. She lay there, covering her chest, clearly counting the seconds until it was over. That wasn't intimacy. It was just going through the motions. That experience killed any desire I had. It's not supposed to be like that. But when I try to discuss it with her, she says, "This is who I am. If you don't like it, just leave." And honestly, I don't know what to do anymore. One night I noticed something strange. My wife tried to call her ex-boyfriend 4 times in a row at 10 p.m. She didn't reach him, but I saw it happen. We used to have an app where we could see each other's incoming and outgoing calls. Seeing this made me lose it. Why was she trying to contact her ex in the middle of the night? I decided to check her messages on her laptop. I hated invading her privacy, but given her behavior, I felt justified. After those calls, she'd send him a text. "I'm going to keep calling until you pick up and talk to me like a normal human being." When I confronted her, she denied everything. So I showed her the app logs. Cornered, she admitted to calling him, but claimed she was just calling back. I pressed further and asked if she messaged him. She denied it, so I showed her the text. Her explanation? He'd drunk-dialed her, spouted nonsense, and she'd told him to buzz off and hung up. But then, feeling guilty, she tried to call him back multiple times. And when he didn't pick up, she sent the message. He never replied. This all happened around the time our intimacy stopped. Her take? She didn't see anything wrong with keeping it from me because it wasn't important. But any contact with an ex is a huge red flag for me. I can't accept it. I didn't want to believe it at first. Many of you pointed out that this was likely cheating, but it seemed like something out of a bad movie, completely unreal. My wife? No way. Well, today, that changed. It's no longer just a suspicion. It's a fact. And honestly, I feel like a fool. I thought these things only happened to other people. I decided to play it cool instead of confronting her outright. I installed a voice-activated recorder in our car. Nothing fancy, just something to pick up conversations. It was in there for 3 days. Yesterday, she used the car for work, then went to a workout. At some point, she had a video call with him. I don't know who initiated it, but I heard everything. Their conversation wasn't just friendly. It was full of flirtation, intimate comments, and the kind of chemistry we used to have 9 years ago. They joked, laughed, and talked like two people deeply attracted to each other. Now I know. It's not just emotional distance. It's betrayal. The recordings revealed something I hadn't had with my wife in years, a connection. Except, it wasn't with me. It was with her ex. They were casually planning vacations together, and she even gave him a 2-year timeline to move back to our country. My world was crumbling as I sat there, listening to an hour of betrayal unfold. I need time to process everything. My attorney meeting is next week, and frankly, I feel like thanking every person who suggested I get that recorder. If not for this, I'd still be in the dark, doubting my own instincts. And to think I felt guilty about planting it in the car. What a joke. For now, I need to gather myself and focus on my kids. From what I pieced together, their affair began last September. It took me 2 months to notice the shifts in her behavior. Next week, I'll be away taking care of my elderly father in another city. My absence means she'll likely be working from my home office, and I'm debating whether to leave the recorder there. Part of me wonders if I've heard enough. The affair started last September, and I've apparently been out of the picture for a long time. My wife barely spends any time at home. She's always busy at her parents', her aunts', or with friends. Even when we put our boys to bed, she either disappears into another room or goes straight to sleep herself. It's like I don't even exist in her world anymore. The recordings have left no room for doubt. She's in love with him and openly talks about visiting him, having sex with him, and even going on vacations together. She told him she plans to leave me soon, and even said she'll be his wife. They've discussed everything, his preferences, their future, and, yes, their sexual encounters. Her family and friends don't know any of this. They think we're just having a rough patch. On the surface, she's still the same Catholic woman who attends church every Sunday, the one from a small, tight-knit town of 20,000 people. But behind closed doors, she's plotting a life with him in our unfinished house. She's given him 2 years to move back here, confident that people will accept it because the kids need a father figure. The affair partner, her ex-boyfriend, was with her for 7 years before she married me. We've been together for 9 years. He lives abroad, but visits frequently. I refuse to let this play out according to her plan. I've spoken with an attorney and learned some harsh truths. Even though I have evidence that could destroy her reputation, doing so wouldn't be smart. We have 2 young children, and I'll need to co-parent with her for the next 15 years. Dragging her family into this as witnesses would only create more drama. Worst of all, I won't win custody. Our kids are too young to be separated from their mother, and the court would keep them in her care. Even selling our unfinished house isn't an option because the children need stable living conditions. For now, they live in her dad's house, but it's temporary. It's frustrating, but it's the reality here in Poland. After consulting my attorney, we decided to deliver her the papers right after Easter. Easter lasts 2 days here, Sunday and Monday. I spent the holiday playing my part, smiling through family dinners, and letting alcohol take the edge off. Tuesday, I stayed home with our youngest son while she went to work in the capital city. With the help of my brother, I packed all my belongings and loaded them into his car. That same day, the postman delivered the divorce papers, technically an invitation to mediation so we could settle things amicably. The paper stated the reason for the divorce: her relationship with another man. I included evidence as leverage for negotiating child support and other arrangements. When she came home, I confronted her. I told her I knew everything. I had undeniable proof of her affair, and she needed to deal with my lawyer from now on. I handed her the papers and left to speak with her parents. Of course, she denied everything, demanded to know what I knew and how I knew it. But it didn't matter. Her parents were shocked when I explained the situation. They believed me. I even recorded the conversation on my attorney's advice. I started by asking them if they thought I was a good husband and father, and they agreed. That recording ensures they can't be used against me as witnesses in court. They were horrified by her actions, admitting she had shattered not only my life but also the lives of our children and their own sense of pride in her. Now, I wait for what comes next. I'll face whatever happens, but I refuse to let her rewrite the story to suit her narrative. After leaving her parents' place, I headed back to the city and reached out to a friend who helped spread the news of her affair to her social circle. 2 hours later, I got a call from my brother-in-law. He said my wife had admitted to cheating with her ex, but claimed they hadn't actually had sex. He assured me everyone in her family was on my side and agreed she had destroyed our family. Her sister even confronted her and called her out for being selfish and cruel. Despite all this, my brother-in-law told me everything could still be saved. He shared that he had cheated on his wife once, but she forgave him, and now they're happy. Then her father called me. He admitted everything was her fault and said she didn't fully grasp the damage she had caused. He also vowed that her affair partner would never be allowed in his house and that he would stop supporting her financially. He even tried calling the guy himself, but the AP didn't pick up, Yet, like everyone else, he believed reconciliation was possible. Finally, her other sister texted me, fully supporting me, but echoing the same sentiment. This marriage can still be saved. But here's the thing, I don't believe it can. I'm absolutely certain of that. Yet, I fear their fixation on the idea that I don't have definitive proof of her physical affair might undermine me. What I do have, though, is damning. Recordings of her saying things like, "Make sure you'll last more than 3 seconds when I visit you in Holland. I wonder if your dad's size is the same as yours. I'm giving you 2 years to move back here. I love you. I'm leaving my husband." Combine this with her total lack of affection toward me over the past 7 months and her post-confrontation confession that she never stopped loving him. And to me, it's clear. I don't need a sex tape to know where her heart, and likely her body, has been. Now, as many of you predicted, she started crawling back. Her texts are dripping with desperation. "I didn't know what I was doing. I can't imagine living without you. I'm so sorry for everything." She's even sent photos of the kids, writing, "We're waiting for you and love you very much." But that's it. No calls, no visits, even though she's driven right past my parents' house multiple times. When we exchange the kids, it's just a quick hi and bye. Her family, on the other hand, has ramped up their communication. Her father has called me twice. Her mother has sent me countless links to Christian articles about forgiveness. And her sisters have all reached out. One sister claimed my wife was possessed by some evil spirit, while the other expressed deep regret over how my wife ruined our family, but still hopes I'll return. Even my brother-in-law took me out for a beer. He wasn't pushy, but made it clear he'd prefer I go back to her. Most of them seemed to follow the same script. "We can't believe she did this, but we'd love for you to come back. We understand if you don't." But the day came when I made up my mind. My lawyer contacted hers and laid out my decision. I cannot forgive her, and I want a divorce. My terms were presented, and now I'm waiting for their response. Of course, the backlash began immediately. One of her sisters outright blamed me, saying I was selfish for not considering reconciliation. She acknowledged that my wife's actions were awful, but insisted that now, by refusing to forgive her, I'm the one destroying the marriage. She even had the audacity to say, "This isn't just revenge on her, it's revenge on your kids too." According to her, I should suck it up and continue living with my wife for the sake of the boys. She painted me as an angry, vengeful man hell-bent on hurting everyone. It's infuriating. Yes, my wife treated me like garbage for over half a year. Yes, she abandoned me emotionally and physically, plotted to leave me, and confessed her love for another man. But now I'm the bad guy? The one who's abandoning his kids? For a moment, I felt guilty. Their arguments were relentless, and I started to question myself. Was I being selfish? Was I letting my anger cloud my judgment? But then I thought about everything. The betrayal, the lies, the total disregard for our marriage and family. And no, I won't back down. The divorce will happen. Still, I've toyed with the idea of presenting terms for reconciliation. Terms I know she'll never accept. It would put the burden of refusal back on her. My conditions? No marriage, just co-parenting. Separate finances. She must move to the capital city with the kids, away from her family. I don't love her anymore, but I'd do anything for my boys. At least this way, I could shut down the narrative that I'm the villain. Because, let's be honest, my wife made her choice long before I did. The thought of extreme measures, like installing a GPS in her car indefinitely or daily phone checks, has crossed my mind, not as a serious plan, but more as a mental exercise to deal with the ridiculousness of her family's accusations that I'm abandoning my kids. Maybe after 7 months of casually dating and putting my life back together, I'd entertain the idea of returning for the boys. And honestly, I wouldn't even feel guilty about cheating if we ever got back together. If she found out, it wouldn't matter because the marriage would already be a sham. But again, this is all hypothetical. I doubt I'd actually go through with it. It's just hard to find a way to silence the guilt they're trying to pile on me. In Poland, the system heavily favors mothers, especially when the kids are as young as ours. Shared custody isn't practical when she lives in a small town an hour away and our boys are settled in their nursery and kindergarten there. The court wouldn't grant me 50-50 custody. My reality? I'll be an every other weekend dad, with extra visits whenever I can manage. It's painful, but it's the best I can do. It's been 2 months since I handed her the divorce papers and left the small town for my parents' house in the city. Life here isn't glamorous. I'm sleeping on their living room couch, surrounded by my work setup and clothes hanging off the chairs. I work from home, help my elderly parents, 88 and 71, with chores and doctor appointments, and squeeze in gym sessions or movie outings to distract myself from the mess my life has become. The weekends are my saving grace. I see my boys, and for those 2 days, I feel genuinely happy. I even did a paternity test, just to silence any lingering doubts, and both boys are mine. That was a relief, at least. The divorce terms are still a work in progress, and it's muddy. Since I'm living with my parents and don't have another place to call home, I want a significant financial settlement to help me start fresh. She's willing to take over the mortgage for the house, but has only offered me a third of what I'm asking for, arguing that it matches my contributions to the home. But here's the thing, I didn't create this mess, and I shouldn't have to pay for it. 1/3 won't give me a decent flat. If she wants the house, she should be the one to make sacrifices, not me. She's starting to realize she might need to sell it anyway, something she should have done from the start since she can't afford the mortgage and my settlement. Then there's child support. She's asking for way too much. On top of that, she insists I should pick up the kids from her town every weekend and drive them back after. That's a lot of fuel and time. I've argued that she should handle the drop-offs while I handle the returns, but of course, she's pushing back. Last Sunday, I attended her niece's communion. Her sister invited me, knowing I'd come to spend more time with my boys. Everyone at the gathering was aware that my decision was final, so no one tried to push me to reconcile. I focused on taking care of the boys while the rest of the family drank and ate. At one point, my wife approached me and asked if my decision was truly final. Keeping my composure, I calmly told her, yes, it is. Nothing will change it. I'm here for my boys, to spend as much time with them as I can. But she wasn't done. She started talking about how remorseful she was, how much she regretted everything, and that she'd ended things with her affair partner. She said she had even gone to an exorcist, confessed every detail of the affair, and left it in God's hands. Honestly, I had to stifle a laugh. I told her plainly, I don't care about your priest or your confessions. If there's anyone you should be coming clean to, it's me. Then I gave her one last chance. If you're truly remorseful, tell me the truth right now. How many times did you sleep with him? She swore she didn't. So I pressed further. Remember that party with your work friends in November? Why did you rent an Airbnb for the night instead of staying at one of your friends' places? Her face went pale, and for a moment, she was speechless. Then, all she could muster was, why do you need to keep torturing yourself with this? That was it. She couldn't answer because the truth is too damning. She's still hiding, still lying, and still hoping I'll let it go. But I won't. I'm done being manipulated. My boys deserve better, and so do I. It's clear now that my wife doesn't fully grasp the depth of the damage she's caused, even as she claims to be remorseful. When I confronted her about lying, I told her point blank that if she were truly sorry, she wouldn't still be hiding things from me 2 months after our separation. I brought up the explicit video chats with her AP, which I know happened, and said, how do you expect us to rebuild trust when you lie the second you open your mouth? I told her outright, if we were ever to get back together, I'd be checking your phone daily. Does that sound like trust to you? She shot back that such behavior would be degrading and treating her like garbage. Before I could respond, our son interrupted, signaling the end of that conversation. I closed it with, remember, you didn't just cheat on me, you cheated on our 2 amazing boys too. That hit a nerve. She started yelling, telling me it was unacceptable to say such things in front of our kids. It's ironic, really, she destroyed their family, but I'm the bad guy for pointing it out. Her sister had told me earlier how much my wife was supposedly suffering and crying every day because of what she'd done. Yet here she was, lying to me in one breath and acting as if she deserved praise for choosing to end things with the AP. She even had the nerve to say, if I wanted, I'd be with him now, and my family couldn't stop me. It's like she expects me to be grateful she's still around at all. At this point, I'm just venting. Thanks for sticking with me through all this. I'll finish this mess one way or another. I worry about my boys, though. The older one has been anxious lately, and I fear they'll need therapy to process all this. No matter what, I'll always be there for them. The attorneys have reached an agreement, and the divorce will be official soon. She's keeping the unfinished house and taking over the mortgage entirely. It's for the kids, and I don't want anyone accusing me of forcing its sale out of revenge. Besides, I don't want to live in her small town anyway. I'm getting a fair amount for my contributions to the house, enough to help me start fresh, though not without sacrifices. Child support was another point of contention, but we reached a reasonable number. She also agreed to drop the boys off at my place every other weekend, with me driving them back afterward. But it's not enough. Seeing my kids only on weekends is heartbreaking. I can't accept being such a limited presence in their lives because of their mother's actions. I'll probably have to start driving to her town midweek just to spend more time with them. Meanwhile, her behavior has shifted. She messages me constantly, saying she loves me, regrets everything, and wishes she could undo it all. Recently, she even admitted she no longer views phone checks as degrading. She's offered to let me monitor her phone, move to the capital city, and spill every detail about the affair if I take her back. She even apologized to my parents in person. Someone must have said something to her, because this sudden willingness to bend over backward is new. Her messages now are painfully emotional. One read, "Thank you for not selling the house and for ending things amicably. Agreeing to your terms means accepting the divorce, but let me just tell you, it's not what I want. I love you deeply, and I hope someday I'll have the chance to prove it to you. I'm sorry for everything. There are no words to express how much I regret this." Her words affect me more than I'd like to admit. The vision of raising my boys in the capital city instead of that small town is tempting. I know she's struggling to manage 2 little boys on her own, but the reality is she did this to herself. She cheated and destroyed what we had. I thought time would help, but the wounds are healing slower than I ever imagined. I've resolved to stay the course and end this for good, but her words make it harder than it should be. Is she truly remorseful? I don't know. It took her 3 months to offer full transparency and even consider moving for the sake of our boys. She only started showing real regret when it became clear I was serious about leaving. And even now, she apologizes via messenger, not in person. Her family has turned on me completely. Her mother calls me a narcissist, and her sister accuses me of exploiting the divorce to make money and leave her destitute with 2 kids. It's absurd, but their pressure still weighs on me. Yesterday, during a brief visit with the kids, my wife invited me to stay the night. I declined, of course. I can't go back, even for a moment. The divorce process drags on, but my resolve remains strong. Her attempts to sway me only make it clearer how much she's grasping at straws. If she were truly remorseful, her actions wouldn't feel so calculated. I appreciate your support. Healing is slow, but I'll get there. One day, I hope I'll be able to update you not as the guy whose wife tore his life apart, but as someone who found happiness again. Every day, I'm faced with the same questions running through my mind. Do I still love her? Could I ever go back to her just for the sake of our kids? Would I be able to live in that small town again and finish the house we started together? And most importantly, would I feel comfortable with myself in 5 or 10 years knowing what she's done? The answer to all of these questions is a resounding no. No hesitation, no second thoughts. I've made my peace with that, even though it hurts deeply. Yes, I love my kids more than anything in the world, and it tears me apart that I can't see them every day. I would love to have the family I once dreamed of, but that dream is gone. I can't forget what she did, and I can't go back to the way things were. At one point, I even gave her the chance to fix things. I told her we could start over, on the condition that she moved with the kids to my city and we began a new chapter together. She refused, saying she couldn't leave her small town because her family supports her there, and she wants the kids to have the house as their future inheritance. I reminded her that a family isn't a building. It's a mother, a father, and children together. Her silence told me everything I needed to know. That's when I finally understood. There is no us anymore. Living in her small town isn't an option for me. That's where her affair began. It's where he spotted her on the street, decided to reach out, and everything unraveled from there. I told her I wouldn't finish building a house located a mile away from her affair partner's family home, and I refused to live with the constant worry that she might run into him again, even though he lives abroad and only visits a few times a year. That's not the life I want for myself or my kids. We agreed that she would keep the house for the kids, and I'd take back what I invested in it. But now she's raising issues with that too. One clause in the agreement says she can't sell the house until the kids turn 18, and if she does, she must split the proceeds equally with me. She argues it's unfair because she plans to use her own money to finish the house. When I asked why she'd even think about selling it, she said, "I can't predict what my life will be like." That one sentence encapsulates why I can't trust her. Every promise feels temporary, every commitment shaky. At this point, I'm leaning towards selling the house altogether, even though it breaks my heart. It was supposed to be for my kids, but I can't stomach the thought of it being tied to her betrayal. Today, she sent me a message. It read, "I'd like you to answer my question. I'm asking here because if I did it in person, we'd only end up shouting at each other. You've told me what you think of me and what I've done, and you don't want to talk about it anymore. So, having said all that, do you want to forgive me, leave the past behind, and rebuild our family from scratch? Or do you already know you'll never be able to forgive me and never come back to us? Please think about it, and let me know if you want our marriage back or not." Honestly, it's audacious for her to even demand such a specific answer at this point. I can't help but wonder if she's trying to clear her slate because there's someone else waiting in the wings. I responded simply, "I'm worth more than a conversation on Messenger. We'll talk soon." When we talked, I laid out 2 non-negotiable conditions for even considering saving the marriage. She must move to the capital city with the kids. She must completely cut ties with her affair partner and his family. The second condition wasn't an issue for her, but the first? Impossible. She argued that it wouldn't make sense financially or logistically. She pointed out that moving to Warsaw would mean giving up the financial stability she has in the small town. Minimal bills because she lives in her father's flat, cheap daycare from her sister's kindergarten, and the family support system she relies on for the kids. She said that moving would only serve my ego and leave her and the kids struggling. And she's right. It would be difficult for her. But the fact that she's unwilling to even consider it shows me that she prioritizes her convenience over rebuilding our family. Her reasoning made one thing crystal clear. She's only interested in reconciliation if it doesn't disrupt her life. That's not remorse. That's damage control. We agreed that I'll continue visiting the kids and bringing them to Warsaw every other weekend. She assured me she wouldn't bring another man into their lives and would remain single. Whether that's true or not, I don't care. My focus is on my boys. But during our conversation, her true colors showed again. When I asked why she hadn't even called me once during our separation and had only sent sporadic texts, her excuse was that she didn't have time with the kids running around. When I pressed her for details about the affair, she flatly refused, saying, "I'm done with that. I'll never talk about it again." Her reasoning? I had shared some of the affair details with her family, and she didn't want that happening again. She told me that the AP's been writing to her for many years, and she kept rejecting him, but when he wrote last, it was because of my passive behavior that she decided to start the affair with him. I just replied that what she just said is beyond disgusting, and she just rolled her eyes and replied, "You're thinking only about yourself. You're the only poor guy in this." I somehow learned to live by myself with limited time with my kids, and now I feel like dating again. Actually, I started using dating apps some time ago. I get a satisfactory amount of matches, and setting up a date with a nice girl is not an issue in general. I already had 2 to 3 short-term relationships which unfortunately had to end because whenever they wanted to meet me, I was busy with the kids. Every other weekend is totally off. But I wish they lasted longer. I always lied that I have some meeting or whatever, and they considered it a lack of interest from my side. The problem is, how do I navigate this? For now, whenever I meet a new girl, I do not say that I'm almost divorced with 2 kids. I found this is the only way for the second or third date to happen. Is there any solution to this? Is there any chance a girl would stay with me if I told the truth from the beginning? Anyone had a similar situation? I do not necessarily feel like having a serious relationship for now, but eventually I would want to be in one.